I found out 3 days ago that my boyfriend Omar has been using ChatGPT to write every meaningful text he's ever sent me. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out which parts of our relationship were even real. My laptop died while I was printing my pharmacy certification forms, and his MacBook was just sitting there open on our coffee table. He was in the shower, so I grabbed it real quick. The ChatGPT tab was right there with a prompt that said, "Write a sweet good morning text that makes my girlfriend feel special but doesn't require me to actually think about her interests." I literally stared at it for like a full minute before my brain processed what I was reading. Then I scrolled up and saw hundreds of prompts, all of them about me, all of them teaching an AI how to manipulate my emotions. Quick context because I know someone will ask. We've been together a year, living in Phoenix together since February. The first few months were rough, he was emotionally distant and kind of cold. But then suddenly in March he completely changed, started sending these beautiful, thoughtful texts, remembering details about my life, apologizing so perfectly when we fought. I thought he was finally opening up and letting me in. Vanessa kept telling me he was finally stepping up and being the man I deserved, except it was all fake. Every single deep conversation we had at 2 a.m., every apology I cried over because it felt so genuine, every text that made me think he finally understood me, ChatGPT wrote all of it. I was literally dating an algorithm. When he got out of the shower and saw me with his laptop, his face just went blank. Not guilty, not sorry, just calculating. I asked him how long he'd been doing this, and he tried to explain it away like it was totally normal. Like lots of guys use AI to help communicate better. Like I should be grateful he cared enough to make the effort, even if it wasn't really him making it. Then I asked about the prompts I saw about girlfriend asking where I am, a neat excuse for being late. And he completely flipped. Started saying I invaded his privacy, that I'm creating drama, that maybe if I wasn't so emotionally demanding, he wouldn't need help managing my feelings. The audacity of this man to use AI to fake an entire emotional connection and then blame Emmy for having expectations. I asked point blank if he's been cheating, and he gave me this whole speech about how cheating is subjective, and we never explicitly discussed boundaries, even though we absolutely did back in January. He kept talking in circles, moving goalposts, doing exactly what those manipulation prompts probably taught him to do. I called out of work yesterday because I couldn't function. Vanessa came over during her lunch break, and I showed her everything. She was scrolling through screenshots of his prompts, just saying, "This is insane," over and over. She wanted me to pack my stuff and leave immediately. But I also couldn't just sit in that apartment spiraling. So yesterday afternoon, I told Omar I was going to stay with Vanessa for a few days to clear my head. He didn't even try to stop me, just said that was probably healthy and gave me space. I threw some clothes in my gym bag and left, except I didn't go straight to Vanessa's. I kept thinking about all those prompts about excuses and late nights, and something told me to actually look at where he goes. So I drove to the LA Fitness on Camelback where he always claims he's working out. His Jeep Cherokee wasn't there. I checked the parking lot twice. Then I drove by his office building even though he said he's been working from home this week. His Jeep wasn't there either. I was about to give up and actually go to Vanessa's when I decided to stop at Target to grab tampons and face wash since I left in such a rush. The Target on Indian School, the one we go to together literally all the time. And that's where I saw his Jeep in the parking lot. My first thought was maybe he had the same idea, needed to pick something up. But when I walked inside and turned down the main aisle, I saw him, standing in the baby section, with a girl I'd never seen before, a very pregnant girl. And they were looking at cribs together, not like friends, not like cousins. He had his hand on her lower back and she was leaning into him, showing him something on her phone and laughing. They looked like every other couple in that section picking out nursery furniture. She was wearing one of those pregnancy announcement shirts. I just stood there frozen behind a display of diapers watching them. She kept touching her stomach and he kept touching her stomach, and they were having this whole animated conversation about whether they needed a changing table or if they could just use a dresser. This girl was pregnant with what was clearly his baby, and they were casually shopping for baby furniture on a Wednesday afternoon while I was supposedly at my best friend's house processing the ChatGPT betrayal. The girl said something about her mom wanting to throw them a baby shower next month, and Omar kissed her forehead. Kissed her forehead. Right there in Target. Then she said she was going to look at onesies and walked toward the clothing section. Omar stayed behind looking at his phone. I don't know what came over me, but I walked right up to him. He looked up and I watched all the color drain from his face. He literally took a step backward and almost knocked over a display of baby bottles. Started stammering something about how this isn't what it looks like, how he can explain, but I cut him off and asked who she was. He tried to say she was his cousin Lana visiting from San Diego and she's having relationship problems, so he's helping her pick out stuff. But I wasn't stupid. I'd seen them together. I asked how far along his cousin was and he said 7 months. 7 months. I asked when exactly they found out and he just stood there opening and closing his mouth like a fish. Then the girl came back around the corner holding tiny socks and saw us, saw me, and the look on her face told me everything. She knew exactly who I was. She stopped dead in her tracks and said, "Omar, what the hell?" in a voice that was absolutely not talking to a helpful cousin. Omar started trying to manage both of us at once, telling her it was fine, telling me we should talk outside. But I planted my feet right there in the baby aisle and asked the girl directly how long she'd been with Omar. She looked at him, looked at me, and I could see her doing math in her head trying to figure out what he'd told me versus what the truth was. She said they'd been together for 2 years. 2 years. Since before I even met him. I asked if she lived with him and she said no, she has her own apartment in Scottsdale but she stays at his place sometimes on weekends. His place. The place that's supposedly our place that we moved into together in February. I asked her if she knew about me and she looked genuinely confused. Said, "What do you mean, who are you?" And Omar tried to physically step between us at that point. Tried to guide me toward the exit. But I shoved his hand off my arm and told her I'm his girlfriend Elena. I've been living with him since February in the apartment on Monroe. The look on her face. She actually grabbed onto the shelf next to her for support. Started asking Omar if this was true. If he was living with someone else, why would he do this? And he was just standing there, looking between us, trying to figure out which fire to put out first. A Target employee started walking toward us asking if everything was okay, and Omar grabbed the pregnant girl's arm and tried to pull her away, saying they needed to talk privately. But she yanked her arm back and asked me directly where on Monroe. I told her the apartment complex name and the building number. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and started scrolling through something, then held it up to show me. It was a text from Omar from 2 days ago. "Can't wait to see you this weekend, baby. I'll make your favorite dinner." The same text he sent me last week, word for word. She started crying right there in the baby section, asking how long. How could he do this? She's about to have his baby. And I'm standing there realizing that every night he said he was at the gym or working late or helping his friend Bo move or any of the 100 excuses, he was with her. He's been living a completely double life. The ChatGPT wasn't just about being bad at emotions, it was about managing 2 entirely separate relationships without getting caught. Omar was trying to calm her down, saying they needed to talk about this at home, not in public, but she kept asking about me in the apartment and when exactly he moved someone else in. I told her February, and she literally gasped, said that's when he told her he needed space because of work stress, that he said he was focusing on his career and needed time alone to figure things out. That's why she stayed in Scottsdale, because he convinced her he needed space while he was actually moving me into what she thought was their future home. The Target employee came back with a manager and asked us to either calm down or leave. The pregnant girl was full on sobbing now, makeup running down her face, and I just felt completely numb. Omar kept trying to touch her shoulder and she kept flinching away. She looked at me and asked if I knew she existed, and I said not until 5 minutes ago. Asked if she knew about me and she shook her head no. We both just stared at him. This man who used AI to craft perfect messages to both of us. Who kept us completely separate. Who was about to have a baby with her while building a life with me. And he was still trying to manage the situation, still trying to control the narrative, telling us both we needed to calm down and be rational and talk about this like adults. Lana grabbed a onesie from the cart and threw it at him. Not hard, it's literally baby clothes, but the gesture said everything. Then she walked past both of us toward the exit. I started to follow her, but Omar grabbed my wrist trying to stop me. I yanked it away and told him don't ever touch me again. I followed Lana out to the parking lot. She was crying and trying to catch her breath. I asked if she was okay, and she laughed this horrible, bitter laugh and said, "Does it look like she's okay?" We just stood there in the Target parking lot. 2 women who'd both been played by the same man, watching him walk out carrying the baby items they'd picked out. He tried to approach Lana, but she screamed at him to get away from her. He looked at me like I was supposed to help him or calm her down or something, but I just stared back. He ended up putting the stuff in his Jeep and driving away. Just left both of us standing there. Lana and I ended up sitting on the curb in that parking lot for almost an hour. She told me everything. How they met 2 years ago at a Suns game. How he pursued her hard. How they talked about getting married after the baby came. How he proposed to her last Christmas. And she has a ring at home that she stopped wearing when he said he needed space in February. She thought they were working through things. Thought he was dealing with commitment fears. Never imagined he was literally replacing her. Update. Okay, so I'm back and the last few days have been absolutely unhinged. To everyone who commented on my first post, thank you, I read every single one and honestly, you all helped me feel less insane. Special shout out to the person who said, this man is living in a sci-fi nightmare of his own making, because that's exactly what this is. So when I left off, Lana and I were sitting on the curb in the Target parking lot, and she was telling me everything about their relationship. We sat there for over an hour just comparing notes, and every single thing she told me made me want to scream. The romantic weekend trips he took her on that he told me were work conferences, the anniversary dinners at the same restaurants he took me to. He literally recycled entire date ideas between us. Eventually, Lana said she needed to go home and process everything, and honestly, same. She asked if I wanted her number, and I said yes, but then immediately felt weird about it because what are we supposed to be now? Trauma-bonded besties. We're not friends. We're 2 women who got screwed over by the same guy. So we exchanged numbers, but neither of us texted after. I drove to Vanessa's place in Tempe, and the second she opened the door, I just started ugly crying. Like full body shaking, can't breathe, makeup everywhere crying. She pulled me inside and I told her everything that happened at Target. She kept saying, oh my god, and what the fuck over and over while I was talking. Her girlfriend Andrea came home from her shift around 8 p.m., and Vanessa caught her up and Andrea literally said she wants to find Omar and key his Jeep. I stayed at their place that night and my phone would not stop going off. Omar called me 17 times. 17. left voicemails that I couldn't even bring myself to listen to, sent like 40 texts that started with, "Please let me explain," and "It's not what you think," and "You're getting the wrong idea." The audacity to tell me I'm getting the wrong idea when I watched him shopping for cribs with his pregnant fiancée. Around 11 p.m., he switched tactics and started sending these long apologetic texts about how he never meant to hurt anyone, and he got in over his head and didn't know how to get out. How he cares about both of us and this whole situation spiraled beyond his control. Like it happened to him instead of him doing it. Zero accountability. Just poor Omar caught in circumstances beyond his understanding. I didn't respond to any of it. Vanessa took my phone and put it on Do Not Disturb so I could actually sleep. Except I couldn't sleep because my brain wouldn't shut up. I kept thinking about every lie, every manipulated conversation, every time he made me feel crazy for asking questions. The next morning I had to go to work because I'd already called out the day before and couldn't afford to miss another shift. Omar texted me around noon asking if we could meet somewhere to talk. Said he owed me a real conversation without distractions. I didn't respond, but honestly I was curious what kind of explanation he possibly thought would work here. What does the ChatGPT prompt say about explaining your pregnant fiancé to your live-in girlfriend? After work, I drove back to the apartment because I needed my own clothes and laptop. I was really hoping Omar wouldn't be there, but of course his Jeep was in the parking lot. I sat in my car for like 10 minutes trying to decide if I should just leave and come back later, but then I got mad. This is my apartment too. I'm on the lease. I paid for half the furniture. Why should I be the one hiding? I went inside and he was on the couch with his laptop, probably writing more AI manipulation tactics. He immediately stood up when he saw me and started talking about how glad he was I came home, how we really need to discuss this like mature adults. I walked past him straight to the bedroom and started throwing clothes into my suitcase. He followed me and kept trying to explain himself. Said his relationship with Lana was complicated and basically over before he met me, but then she got pregnant and he felt obligated to stay involved. That they weren't really together anymore. They were just co-parenting before the baby even arrived. I asked him how exactly they were co-parenting when she didn't even know I existed, and he had no answer for that. I asked about the engagement ring she mentioned, and he said that was from before, from when they were actually serious, but they'd basically called it off even though she still wore the ring sometimes. I asked why he was shopping for baby furniture with her if they were broken up, and he said because it's still his kid, and he's trying to be responsible. Like I'm supposed to give him points for buying a crib for his secret baby. Then I asked about the texts, the identical texts to both of us. And he actually tried to defend it by saying he was just trying to make both of us happy, trying to be a good partner to both of us. And the AI helped him stay organized and attentive. Stay organized. Like we were items on a task list. I asked how he thought this was going to work long term. Like genuinely, what was his plan here? Was he going to keep us in separate zip codes forever? Keep lying about work trips and gym sessions? She's about to have a baby. Babies are not part-time. Did he think he could just bounce between two households and nobody would notice? And he said he wasn't trying to keep it going long term. He was trying to figure out how to end things with Lana without abandoning his kid. But then he met me and caught feelings and everything got complicated. Caught feelings. After lying to me for a year. After using AI to fake emotional connection. After playing house with me while staying engaged to someone else. I asked when exactly he was planning to tell me about Lana and the baby, and he admitted he didn't know. Said he was waiting for the right time. The right time was apparently never because I had to find out in a Target baby aisle. My phone started buzzing while we were arguing, and it was Lana calling. I stepped into the bathroom to take it, and she was crying, asking if I was with Omar. I said yes, and she begged me to ask him why he's been ignoring her calls all day. Apparently, he'd been texting me while completely ghosting her, playing us against each other even in the aftermath. I put her on speaker and asked Omar why he wasn't answering Lana's calls. He looked like he wanted to die, but said he was trying to talk to me first and didn't want to divide his attention. Lana started yelling through the phone about how she's 7 months pregnant with his child and he's worried about dividing attention. About how she needs to know what the plan is because she has a baby shower next month and everyone's going to ask where he is. Omar tried to calm her down, saying they'd figure it out, but she kept getting more upset, asking if he was going to be at the birth, if he was going to help with the baby, if she should tell her parents he's been living with another woman this whole time. Her voice was shaking and I could hear how scared she was underneath the anger. I got off speaker and told Lana I'd call her back, then hung up. Told Omar he needed to handle his pregnant fiancé situation before trying to have any conversation with me. He said they're not engaged anymore, and I said, does she know that? Because from where I'm standing, she thinks you're just taking a break. He got defensive, saying I was making this harder than it needed to be, that we could work through this if I would just listen with an open mind. An open mind. This man wanted me to be open-minded about his double life, about the baby he hid from me, about the woman he proposed to while dating me. I finished packing my suitcase and he asked where I was going. Said back to Vanessa's, and he said we should probably talk about the lease since we're both on it. Talk about the lease. His whole life is falling apart and he's worried about apartment logistics. I told him I'd figure out the lease later. Right now, I just needed space. He asked how much space, and I said, I don't know, Omar. How much space do you need to fit 2 entire relationships? He didn't have an answer for that either. I left and went back to Vanessa's. Andrea was making dinner and had already set a place for me, which honestly made me want to cry again. They didn't ask questions, just let me eat and decompress. Around 10 p.m., Lana texted me asking if we could meet tomorrow to talk. Not as friends, but because we both needed to know what we were actually dealing with. I said yes, and we agreed to meet at the Starbucks near her apartment in Scottsdale at 2 p.m., since I had the afternoon off. I was nervous about it because what do you even say in that situation? Sorry, my boyfriend is your baby daddy? Sorry, we both got manipulated by a man with a ChatGPT subscription? The next day, I showed up early and got an iced coffee. I didn't drink because my stomach was in knots. Lana arrived right at 2 p.m. looking exhausted and still pregnant, and I felt this weird guilt even though none of this was my fault. We sat at a table in the corner and just stared at each other for a minute. She asked if Omar and I were still living together, and I said technically yes, but I'm staying with friends. She asked if we were broken up, and I said, I mean, yeah, after everything, but we haven't had like an official conversation about it. She said she needed to know because she's trying to figure out if he's going to be involved with this baby or if she's doing it alone. I told her I honestly didn't know what Omar was planning because every time I try to talk to him, he just manipulates the conversation and makes everything about how complicated the situation is for him. She said that's exactly what he does to her too. That every time she asks direct questions, he gives these circular non-answers that sound meaningful but don't actually say anything. We started comparing more stories and the patterns were insane. He told her he needed space in February because of work stress. That's when I moved in. He told me he couldn't go to my cousin's wedding in April because of a work deadline. He was at her baby shower. He told her he had to work late 3 nights a week. Those were the nights he came home to me. Everything lined up perfectly in the worst possible way. Lana showed me texts from last week where he was saying he loved her and couldn't wait to meet their daughter and be a family, showed me the Pinterest board they made together for the nursery, showed me photos of them at her ultrasound appointment, and I just sat there looking at this evidence of a whole entire life he was living that I knew nothing about. I showed her some of my texts with Omar, and she pointed out that certain phrases were exactly the same, not just similar, identical. The ChatGPT was giving him the same lines to use on both of us. We'd both received the exact same, "I'm so proud of you for handling that difficult situation with Grace" text on different days about completely different situations. She asked if I knew anything about his family, and I said not really. He always said they weren't close. She said that's weird because his mom lives in Surprise and they have family dinners every Sunday. Every Sunday. I'd been with Omar for a year and never met his mother, because apparently Sunday was his me-time day that I respected. Lana said his mom was excited about the baby, that she'd already bought a bunch of stuff for the nursery, that his younger sister was planning the baby shower, that his whole family knew about Lana and the baby, but apparently none of them knew I existed. I was the secret, not the pregnant fiancé, me. That hit different. Like I wasn't even the main character in my own relationship. I was the side piece who thought she was the girlfriend. The whole time I was building a life with Omar, his actual life was happening somewhere else with someone else. Lana got quiet and then asked if I thought there were others. Like if he could maintain 2 full relationships, maybe there were more we didn't know about. And honestly, I hadn't thought of that, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it. How many women had received the same ChatGPT-generated love texts? How many Sunday dinners with his family had happened while he told other women he was busy? We sat there for almost 2 hours just unpacking everything, and it was honestly more productive than any conversation I'd had with Omar. At least Lana and I were being honest with each other. When we finally left the Starbucks, she said she was going to confront him about all of it and ask him to make a choice. Either he's involved with the baby or he's not, but she's done being confused about where they stand. I drove back to Vanessa's and found Omar had texted me like 30 times asking where I was and if we could please talk. Said he'd been thinking a lot about everything and wanted to make things right. I didn't respond because what does make things right even look like at this point? That night around 9 p.m., someone knocked on Vanessa's door, and when she looked through the peephole, it was Omar. He drove 40 minutes to find me and was standing on her doorstep asking to talk. Vanessa told him through the door that I didn't want to see him and he needed to leave. He kept saying he just needed 5 minutes, that there were things I didn't understand, that Lana was telling me lies. Andrea came to the door and told him more firmly to leave or she'd call the cops. He finally left, but Vanessa was pissed that he showed up at her place. Said he was escalating and I needed to be careful. I felt bad that my drama was bleeding into their space. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Lana sent at 3 a.m. He was just at my apartment. We need to talk ASAP. This is so much worse than we thought. Last update. Okay, I'm writing this from my parents' house in Tucson, and I still can't believe everything that's happened in the last week. So I left off with Lana's 3 a.m. text saying, "This is so much worse than we thought." I called her immediately, even though it was early, and she picked up on the first ring sounding completely wrecked. She said Omar showed up at her apartment around midnight demanding to talk, and when she let him in, he completely spiraled. Apparently, he was furious that we'd met at Starbucks, said we had no right to compare notes behind his back, and that we were ganging up on him and making everything worse. Lana told him we had every right to talk since he'd been lying to both of us, and that's when he really lost it. Started yelling about how she trapped him with the pregnancy, how she knew he wasn't ready for kids but got pregnant anyway, how this whole situation was basically her fault for not being more careful. Lana was 7 months pregnant and he was blaming her for it like he wasn't there participating. She told him to get out, but he refused. Said they needed to settle this right now because he couldn't keep doing this back and forth. That he needed to make a decision and stick with it. And that's when he told her he was choosing me. Just straight up said he wanted to be with me. That what we had was real and new and uncomplicated. That he'd support the baby financially, but he couldn't be in a relationship with her anymore. Lana said she just stared at him, asking if he was serious. If he really thought he could just walk away from his baby to play house with someone he'd been lying to for a year. And he said yes. He said, "What I didn't know couldn't hurt me. And once the baby was born, he'd figure out a custody schedule that kept everything separate." I felt physically sick listening to this. This man really thought he could just choose me, and I'd never find out about any of it. That he could compartmentalize his life forever and nobody would be the wiser. The level of delusion was staggering. But then Lana said there was more. After he told her he was choosing me, she got so angry that she grabbed his phone off her coffee table and threatened to call me right then to tell me what he just said. He tried to grab it back and they had this whole struggle over the phone, and she managed to unlock it because she knew his passcode. And she saw his texts. Not texts to me or to her, texts to someone named Giselle with heart emojis, recent texts from that same night before he came to Lana's apartment. Messages about meeting up later that week and how much he missed her and couldn't wait to see her. Lana said she scrolled up and there were months of messages. Another woman, a whole other relationship we didn't know about. When she confronted him about Giselle, he tried to grab his phone back, but she wouldn't let him. She read messages out loud where he was planning dates and sending the same romantic texts and making promises. He finally admitted that yeah, he'd been seeing someone else casually, but it wasn't serious. It wasn't like what he had with either of us. Casually. Like that made it better. Lana said she lost her mind. Started screaming at him, asking how many women there were. If anyone in his life was real. If he was capable of telling the truth about anything. And he kept trying to minimize it, saying Giselle was just someone he saw occasionally when he needed space from all the pressure, that she didn't mean anything, as if that was supposed to be comforting. She told him to get out, and he finally left, but she was so shaken she couldn't sleep. That's when she texted me. I just sat there in Vanessa's guest room at 4 a.m., trying to process that there was another woman, 3 of us that we knew about. I called Vanessa into the room and told her everything Lana said. She was pacing around her bedroom saying this was absolutely insane, and we needed to do something. That Omar couldn't just keep getting away with this pattern of lying and manipulation. Then she said something that hadn't even occurred to me yet. What about his family? His mom, who supposedly had weekly Sunday dinners that I was never invited to. I told her what Lana had said about his mom living in surprise and knowing all about the baby and being excited to be a grandmother. Vanessa said we should go talk to her, that she deserved to know her son was living a completely fraudulent life and hurting multiple women. At first I thought that was too far, but then I got angry thinking about how his whole family knew about Lana and the baby, but none of them knew I existed, like I was some dirty secret he had to hide. We decided to meet up with Lana first that morning to figure out our plan. Met her at a park near her place around 11 a.m. and told her what we were thinking about confronting his mom. Lana looked exhausted, but said she'd give us his mom's address in surprise if we really wanted to do it. Said his mom's name was Amelie and she'd met her multiple times at family dinners. She warned us that Amelie could be pretty protective of Omar, but might also be horrified to learn what he'd been doing. Lana also told us more about what she'd seen on Omar's phone. The contact name was Giselle, with purple hearts, and the messages were definitely romantic. She'd managed to see enough to know this wasn't just some casual thing. There were messages going back months. We talked about trying to find Giselle to warn her, but we only had a first name and no other information. Lana remembered Omar had mentioned joining a hiking group, so we looked up the meetup page and found a woman named Giselle who'd been active in the group. We sent her a message through Meetup saying we needed to talk about Omar and it was urgent. She responded within an hour, asking what was going on and if he was okay. We asked if she could meet us that afternoon and she agreed. When she showed up at the park, she looked young and sweet and completely unsuspecting, mid-20s with dark curly hair. We told her everything and watched her face go through shock, disbelief, anger. She'd been seeing Omar for about 8 months through the hiking group. He told her he was single and looking for something real. When we told her about the baby and about me living with him, she looked like she might be sick. After we finished talking to Giselle and she left to process everything, Vanessa and I decided we were definitely going to Omar's mom's house. Lana gave us the address and said good luck because we'd need it. It was almost 4 p.m. by the time we got in Vanessa's car and drove out to her. The house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a single-story ranch style with a well-maintained yard. There was a silver Camry in the driveway and my hands were shaking as we walked up to the front door. Vanessa knocked and after a minute, a woman in her late 50s opened the door. She had Omar's eyes and his smile, and I felt this weird wave of anger seeing the resemblance. Vanessa asked if she was Amelie and if we could talk to her about Omar. She looked confused but invited us inside. Her living room was decorated with family photos and I could see Omar in several of them looking happy and normal. There was even a framed ultrasound photo on the mantle that must have been Lana's baby. We sat on her couch and I didn't even know where to start. Finally, I just said, "I'm Elena and I've been living with your son." The confused look on her face told me everything. She said that couldn't be right. Omar lives alone. He's been focusing on preparing for the baby with Lana. Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed Amelie photos of our apartment, photos of me and Omar together, dated receipts from furniture we'd bought. Amelie's face went pale and she kept saying, "This doesn't make sense. Omar wouldn't lie about something like this." I told her Omar had been lying about a lot of things and we were here because she deserved to know the truth about her son. I explained the whole situation, the double life, how neither Lana nor I knew about each other until this week, how there was even a third woman named Giselle. Amelie sat there shaking her head saying, "No, my son wouldn't do this. You must be mistaken or exaggerating." She kept defending him, saying he's under a lot of stress with the baby coming and maybe there were some misunderstandings, but he's a good man. Vanessa asked how it was a misunderstanding that he moved a girlfriend into an apartment while supposedly preparing to be a father with his fiancée. Amelie said fiancé was a strong word. They'd had some problems and taken a break, but they were working through it for the baby's sake. I asked if she knew they got engaged last Christmas, and Amelie said yes, but they'd called it off in February when things got rocky, except that's when I moved in. February is when Omar told Lana he needed space and simultaneously moved me into our apartment. I showed Amelie our lease with both our names on it, dated February 15th. She stared at it for a long time and I could see something shifting in her expression. Then she asked why we were really here, what we wanted from her. And I said honestly, I just wanted her to know who her son really is. That he's not the stressed out dad-to-be trying his best. He's a manipulator who used AI to fake emotional connections with multiple women while keeping us all separate so nobody would know the truth. Amelie got defensive, then saying I was being cruel and clearly bitter about a breakup. That Omar had already called her earlier that day, saying he was going through a difficult time with a girlfriend who was making accusations and causing drama. Of course, he'd already gotten to her first, already planted the seeds that I was the problem. I asked her point blank if she thought it was normal that in a year of dating her son, I'd never met her or even knew she existed, that he told me his family wasn't close. She went quiet at that. Said Omar had mentioned a girl he was casually seeing but nothing serious. Casually. Vanessa jumped in and said we weren't here to attack her or her son. We were here because 3 women had been lied to and manipulated, and maybe if his own mother knew the truth, she could help him get actual help instead of enabling his behavior. Amelie did not like that. Said we had a lot of nerve coming to her home and telling her how to parent her adult son. She stood up and said she thought we should leave. That she'd talked to Omar about all of this, but she wasn't going to sit here and listen to strangers badmouth her child. I stood up too and said that's the problem. Everyone keeps enabling him and making excuses, and that's why he thinks he can treat people like this. That Lana is 7 months pregnant and he told her last night he's choosing me, then probably told me something different and told his mom a third story entirely. Amelie said relationships are complicated and we don't know what Omar's been going through mentally. I said you're right, we don't know because he used ChatGPT to write all his emotional responses, so we never actually got to know him at all. She asked what I meant by ChatGPT and I explained the whole thing. The prompts, the manipulation tactics, the gaslighting scripts. She looked genuinely disturbed by that but still defensive. As we were walking to the door, I turned and said, "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your son is about to be a father and he's completely unprepared because he's been too busy maintaining lies to actually grow up." Amelie's eyes got watery and she said she was sure there were 2 sides to this story. I said there are actually 3 or 4 sides depending on which woman you ask, and walked out. Vanessa and I sat in her car for a few minutes before driving away. She said, well, that was brutal, and I said yeah, but at least now she knows. Maybe she'll actually ask Omar real questions instead of just accepting his explanations. On the drive back to Tempe, my phone started blowing up. Omar was calling over and over. I put him on speaker and answered. He was furious, asking what the hell I was doing going to his mother's house and upsetting her. Said I had no right to involve his family in our relationship problems. I said our relationship problems include his pregnant fiancé and his other girlfriend, so yeah, his family was already involved whether he liked it or not. He said that his mom was crying and his sister was calling, asking what was going on, and I'd created this huge mess for no reason. I said the mess already existed, I just made it visible. He kept yelling about boundaries and respect, and how dare I ambush his mother with lies. I told him they weren't lies, and he knew it. That Vanessa and I showed his mom proof of everything, and she could either believe her son is perfect, or accept that he's been living a double life. He said his mom was upset because I attacked her family and made up stories about ChatGPT to make him look bad. I said the ChatGPT history speaks for itself, and if he wanted to deny it, he could show his mom his laptop, but we both knew he wouldn't. He switched tactics then and said he never wanted things to end like this, that he did care about me, and he was sorry things got so messed up. That if I would just calm down and stop involving other people, we could talk through this maturely. I asked what there was to talk through, and he said we could figure out a way forward if I was willing to give him another chance. I literally laughed, told him there was no way forward, no second chance, nothing to figure out. That I was done and he needed to focus on being a father to his baby, instead of trying to manage multiple relationships he couldn't handle. He said I was being unfair, and I said no. Omar Unfair was using AI to manipulate my emotions for months, while living an entirely separate life. He hung up on me. About 20 minutes later, Lana texted asking if I'd really gone to Omar's mom's house because Omar was blowing up her phone saying I was trying to turn his family against him. I told her yes and gave her the whole rundown. She said his mom actually called her right after we left, asking if what we said was true about me living with Omar. Lana confirmed everything and said Amelie got very quiet and then said she needed time to think about all this. I ended up going back to the apartment that evening when I knew Omar would be at work to get the rest of my stuff. Vanessa and Andrea came with me to help pack. We were loading boxes when Omar came home early. He saw us and his face went red asking what I was doing. I said, "What does it look like? I'm moving out." He tried to block the doorway saying we needed to talk first, but Andrea told him to move or she'd move him herself. He stepped aside and just stood there watching us pack. Kept trying to start conversations about working through this and giving him a chance to explain. I asked what was left to explain and he said a lot of what I thought happened wasn't the full story. That he'd been struggling with commitment issues and anxiety and didn't handle things well, but he never meant to hurt anyone. I said using AI to fake an entire relationship isn't a commitment issue, it's a character issue. I stayed at Vanessa and Andrea's for a few more days while figuring out next steps. My parents offered to let me come stay in Tucson for a while. Before I left, I met up with Lana one more time at a Panera near her apartment. She said Omar had been trying to do damage control with his family all week, and his mom was asking a lot of questions he couldn't answer. His sister apparently called Lana directly to apologize for not knowing about me and said she was disappointed in her brother. Lana seemed more at peace than when we first met. Said she'd hired a lawyer for custody arrangements and was preparing to do this alone. That she'd rather be a single mom than co-parent with someone who couldn't be honest about anything. I told her she was going to be an amazing mom, and her baby was lucky to have someone so strong. We hugged goodbye and promised to keep in touch even though we both knew we probably wouldn't. We weren't really friends, just two women who survived the same disaster. I haven't heard from Giselle since our meeting at the park. I hope she's okay and moving on. I'm in Tucson now living with my parents, which feels weird at 26 but also safe. Someone commented on my first post that I should be grateful I found out now instead of years later, and they were absolutely right. It hurts, but imagine if I'd married him or gotten pregnant too. Imagine wasting more years on someone fundamentally incapable of authentic connection. The moral of this story, if there is one, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.